Welcome to the Organisational Inclusionist. I'm your host, Grace Masuro. In this podcast series, we'll be delving deep into the pressing issues surrounding equality, diversity, and inclusion in both the workplace and the broader world. My goal is to foster understanding, inspire change, and amplify the voices of those advocating for a more inclusive and equitable society. Throughout this series, I'll be engaging in candid discussions with leaders, experts, activists, and changemakers from various fields. We'll explore the challenges, successes, and evolving landscapes of equality, diversity, and inclusion. From dismantling systematic biases to promoting equal opportunities for all, we'll touch on a broad range of topics. But we won't stop at discussing problems. We'll actively seek out solutions and actionable steps to drive positive change. Our aim is to inspire and empower you, our listeners, to take an active role in making the world a better place for everyone. This is the Organisational Inclusionist. Let's get started. Welcome to this episode of the Organisational Inclusionist. My name is Grace Masuro and I am your host. I am not joined by a guest today. International Women's Day / International Women's Month has got me feeling like doing things a little bit differently for March. So I thought I'd do a solo episode, really talking about what this month means to me and celebrating some of the amazing women that I know and events that I've been to. But also hopefully giving leaders some ideas around how they can support their female employees, not just in March, but all year round. So welcome to this episode. I hope you find it fun, insightful, and empowering. I hope it gets you feeling and thinking about actually taking up the mantle and just doing what you can for your female colleagues and sometimes female friends. So let's get into it. So I've always been a bit funny about when we have these, celebratory days or months, because I kind of feel like we should just celebrate all year round. We live in a world where, some people with certain protected characteristics don't feel like the world was made for them. And I feel like we are so educated now that we as a culture and as individuals, especially as leaders, should be doing any and everything we can to celebrate difference, but also what unites us as often as we can. So I'm always quite audacious with these months or days, and I just extend them as far as I can. So I invite you to do the same. Just to introduce myself for anyone that is new to the podcast or maybe doesn't know me very well. My name is Grace Masuro. I call myself the Organisational Inclusionist, and that is because I am an organisational development consultant as well as an inclusion strategist and coach. So to me, everything that I do is about supporting organisations to develop constantly with inclusion in mind. My background is that I was born in Nigeria. I moved to the UK when I was 5 years old. When I landed in the UK, I was blown away by the weather, first of all, but also by the fact that everyone spoke a different language. So when I moved to the UK, I couldn't speak or really understand English. So when I started primary school, me and my sister were put in our own class. I call it remedial class because we didn't learn very much, but we got to spend all day playing, which was fun. Essentially, the assumption was that because we couldn't understand the language, that we just weren't very clever and we couldn't be around other kids. So it took us about a year to learn the language, and then we moved into general population and got to really just understand where we now lived. And one of the things that always really stood out to me was just that being African as well as Black was a thing here. Where I was from, everyone was African and everyone was Black, and I wasn't aware that I was Black until I moved to the UK. So it was a very, very interesting time. I'm also a mother. I have an amazing 13-year-old daughter who is my absolute world, but also my reason for doing this work. She is the one that inspires me to keep going when things get tricky. She is the one that sometimes gives me ideas about things that are going on because of her studying via TikTok. So my daughter, she's just amazing. I am also a breast cancer thriver. On Christmas Eve 2020, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I spent the majority of 2021 being treated, and having cancer added an additional level or layer of intersectionality to my identity. Since having breast cancer and going through my treatment, I am now not just Black, I'm not just a woman, I'm also legally disabled under the Equalities Act, which means that I am protected from discrimination because I've had cancer. And there are a number of reasons for that. The first is there is always a risk of recurrence. So there is that need to protect cancer thrivers from discrimination. But there's also sometimes misconceptions around our ability to work after having cancer. Without a doubt, I am a completely different person since having cancer. Before I had it, I always almost lived to the trope that was the strong Black woman, you know, the one that always had a stiff upper lip, was always able to do everything, didn't need help. Just never appeared vulnerable. And having cancer really helped me to lean into vulnerability and lean into the joy of asking for help and having people actually want to help you. I'd always grown up not seeing my mum do that and not being conditioned to do that. You know, my mum's message very early on in my life when I was having a difficult time at school and someone was teasing me, and I brought it up to my mum a few times, and the last time I brought it up to her, I was in primary school, and she said, if you tell me one more story that doesn't end with you finishing it with that person, you're going to be in trouble. And so the messaging that I then stored very early on is that if I've got a problem, I need to deal with it myself. And as you can imagine, that's exhausting. You know, sometimes you do just need a circle. You need people that you can go to that can help you. So my work is very much today about helping others. So thinking about how I can help leaders who aspire to be more inclusive, who want to change the way their teams look, feel, and operate, but just don't know how. I have academic experience in equality, diversity, and inclusion. So I have a level 7 in strategic approaches to equality, diversity, and inclusion, which means that I help organizations really look at things strategically rather than from a whimsical perspective or a kind of following the crowd approach to it. What does your business actually need? What do your people need? What would your customers like to see? How do we build that into a strategy for you that really holds you to account? And then how do we create initiatives that are bespoke to your organization and actually help you to achieve the objectives you have set in your inclusion strategy? My messaging on LinkedIn is a lot around, if you don't have an EDI strategy, really, what are you doing? Because, you know, I know running a business as well, if I kind of do things in a really airy-fairy way, which I sometimes do because I'm human, things don't stick, you know. I will be doing something for weeks and thinking, you know, why hasn't this brought more clients on? Well, actually, that's not what it was going to do. It was never going to do that. So if I'd had a strategy around certain things, the outcome would have been different. So I really help organizations to understand that and to create one that works, but also one that is really easy to understand and helps you to communicate the why of your diversity, equality, and inclusion initiatives to your CFO, to your CEO, to your people. There will always, unfortunately, be people within organizations that are somewhat resistant to diversity and inclusion. And that's not always because they don't want to see equality, or they don't want to see equity, or they don't want to see inclusion. Sometimes it's purely because they're afraid they're going to be left behind. And I'm really passionate about the fact that inclusion is about all of us. So the work that I do is about helping organizations to bring everyone on board and having an effective inclusion strategy that really sets out why diversity, equality, and inclusion is important and necessary for your organization, and how you include everyone as part of that work is so, so important and so, so powerful. So I help you with that. International Women's Day or International Women's Month is really about recognizing the fact that there is still a significant gap when we look at pay gaps between men and women, when we look at the ethnicity pay gap, which looks at pay gaps between Black, brown, and white women, when we also consider the fact that women weren't allowed to have bank accounts in their name without a husband co-signing until 1970. People, that was 50 years ago. 54, 55, my maths ain't great. It was recent. So, of course, there is a massive gap in terms of, where we look at the financial power that women have in the United Kingdom, for example, but also across the world. The financial power isn't equal. It's not the same because of the fact that we were only allowed to have bank accounts in our names by ourselves 50 years ago. There's a massive gap in kind of investment power of women as well. I think I heard recently that women compared to men, women in total have invested about 100 million compared to men who have invested 6.5 billion. And the reason that we have that is because of the fact that women weren't viewed as independent from their husbands until very recently. But also because of the fact that when we look at pay gaps, for example, women are still paid less than men. When you think about the impact that has on single parent households, that then impacts where they can send their children for school. It impacts the experiences and the exposure that their children get to have, the life experiences that really develop and direct your next steps in life. Those are limited if women aren't earning the same as men or earning fairly for their wage and the equivalent of men doing the same job. But also when we think about burnout and we think about stress, particularly within women from the global majority, this is really significant stuff. It's really important stuff. And that's why recognizing International Women's Day, International Women's Month is so, so powerful and so, so important, because there is still so much work to do to close the gap for women in the working world, but also in society. And I'm really excited that we get to shine a light on that this month. I'm hoping to encourage organizations and people to recognize and do something about that all year round. So I mentioned earlier that I was born in Nigeria. In my culture, so let me give you some context actually. So I was born in Nigeria. I am the firstborn daughter of a Nigerian family, and I always say that essentially means that I came out of the womb with a job. And my job was to look after my younger brother and sister, to set an example, to never fail, to work extremely hard, and to not get into any trouble. What I was never taught was how to develop in my career. So growing up, my mum and dad worked really junior jobs in the UK. So they worked routine. When I think about the tick box, the equality diversity forms you fill out, they were routine. I'd tick the routine for them, right? Those are the types of jobs they did, very entry level roles. And for them, the focus was really on putting food on the table and making sure we had a roof over our heads. They definitely lived for their kids. And so for them, there wasn't any aspiration. Well, there probably was aspiration, but there wasn't any opportunity to focus on career progression, because their focus was on settling their children in a new country, getting used to a new dynamic, a new culture, and making sure their kids always had food. So like I said, my messaging from my mum was always just work really hard. Don't get in any trouble. Keep your head down. You will have to work twice as hard, but your work will speak for itself. And anyone that lives in this century knows that that is not the case. I was never taught to shine a light on my work, to talk about my successes or the things that I did well. And what that meant is that in my career, I was often overlooked, despite the fact that I was exceeding my targets, my performance objectives, my KPIs. I was getting on really well with the team. I was developing other people. I was doing everything and more required of me, but I wasn't drawing attention to it, and I wasn't telling people what I was doing, which meant that people that sometimes were doing half of the work that I was doing, but were talking about it in the team meetings, were emphasizing it in one-to-ones, were asking for pay rises, were asking for promotions, those people were getting progressed faster than me. And I found that I had to leave organizations to progress, because whenever I did talk about progressing in the majority of the organizations that I was in, I was usually fobbed off and told, carry on doing your great work. And, maybe in 6 months' time, we can revisit it. If I ever asked for a pay rise, we need you to improve your performance in this area, or we don't have the budget, etc. So I never felt like I was seen as someone that had the ability to progress. And some of that was definitely down to my cultural conditioning. But I think a lot of that was down to the fact that I was a woman. And, women aren't necessarily coached or trained, or weren't anyway in my time, coached or trained to ask for more. And therefore, whenever we did try it, we sometimes would fall flat because we didn't have the experience. So if someone said no, it was like, oh, okay. So I am really passionate about getting women to appreciate and understand that, particularly women from the global majority, because I think our intersecting identities add multiple layers of challenge for us when it comes to progressing within organizations, but also navigating sometimes the politics that exists. So I developed a program, which I'm really proud of. It's called She Can, She Will, and it's a 12-month program that includes one-to-one monthly coaching with moi. So I do everything from talking to women about their lived experience in the workplace, some of the trauma that they might still be carrying, some of the things that might still be holding them back from claiming the roles that they deserve within their organization or beyond. I also include, because I think it's important to get together. I think sometimes seeing that we're not alone in all of this can be really powerful. So I bring together cohorts of women in quarterly sessions where we can just come together to do some group learning, but also some group sharing and celebrate our wins. I don't think we as women make enough time for that. The program itself is specifically targeted at women from the global majority, because I think that when I think about the work that I do, some of it is very much around what would I have liked as a woman from the global majority, trying to progress in my career. And I would have loved to have someone who understood my lived experience, had actually lived and breathed it themselves in the workplace, to really coach me through it, which is why I created the program. And essentially at the end of it, my ideal for this program is that every single woman that goes on there is able to look back a year later, and see significant steps that she's made both personally and professionally as a result of the coaching program. And to feel like, as Bazoma St. John says, the badass that she is. It doesn't sound as good with an English accent, and I can't fake an American one. So I just have to go with that, but you get what I mean. So I'm really, really excited about that. I encourage organizations to get the program firstly, because despite what you might think, women from the global majority still need specific support to support them to progress within organizations. And many of them will not ask you for it. So if you're a leader that really wants to lead from the front and offer a solution that your people need but may not ask for, get in touch. We can definitely talk about kind of what the cohort might look for your business and how we make it bespoke to some of the challenges that your business may have. Without a doubt, it's necessary. So before I set up my consultancy, I had spent probably half a decade as a leadership development coach, supporting organizations and leaders from a range of sectors through leadership apprenticeships. And one of the things that I found we spent most of our time doing was talking about work, talking about the challenges people will have leading teams, working with women who were having challenges getting their voices heard, and really working with those people over those 12 months was actually my joy. It was just amazing to see the transformation over a 12-month period, the success stories, the freedom that people walked out of those programs with. So I can definitely speak to the value of these programs, but also speak to the value of having a program specifically for women from the global majority. So if you'd like to discuss the program, please do get in touch with me. You can contact me on LinkedIn. So my profile on LinkedIn is Grace Masuro, or you can send me an email. But yeah, if you are a business or a leader who doesn't identify as being from the global majority, but you are someone who aspires to lead and manage diverse teams. So you might have a diverse team now, but you want to increase diversity. You want to retain that amazing talent. You want to have better relationships with them. You want to support them more effectively. Or you don't have a diverse team at all when you're starting from scratch and you want to know, how do I engage people from a diverse background? How do I get them? How do I educate myself? You want to talk through some of the challenges you've had, some of the things that hold you back from having these, conversations about diversity, equality, and inclusion in your organization, things around how you can be a better ally. I have a program called the Organizational Inclusionist Leader, which is again a 12-month program. I've included monthly one-to-one coaching sessions with me. We will traditionally do those virtually, but we can get together quarterly face-to-face, which I think is always nice. If this is something that is arranged as a cohort, on a cohort basis by your organization, then I love getting groups together. So I would build in quarterly group sessions where we can go through pieces of work that have been completed, talk through some of the challenges, brainstorm, share best practice, etc. Really use it as a co-learning space. I think it's really important for me to offer solutions that enable individuals to develop themselves, but also solutions that enable, once those individuals have, gotten the development and support that they need through the She Will program, for example, that they are then released into teams that are led by leaders that are inclusive, which is why I also offer the Organizational Inclusionist Leader. So it's a holistic approach that I think is so important and so powerful. So if that is something that you think your organization would benefit from or needs, I think it's really important. When we're talking about, because I like to make sure that I build bespoke solutions for your organizations, there might be specific needs that you have. I'm very big on speaking from lived experience. So if there are particular groups that you're struggling to engage, to recruit, to develop, and it isn't something that I personally have experience of, I do like to bring in some of my friends who do have lived experience, but also who are competent and capable diversity, equality, and inclusion professionals to really support and add value to those sessions. So please do get in touch if actually you think, no, this is something we need. If you've approached it in a similar way in the past and maybe it hasn't worked, it might still be something we should talk about, particularly in the current climate. As we know, or most of us will know, the world is a little bit crazy right now with what's happening in the United States, the attack on diversity, equality, and inclusion, and how that is rolling over to the UK. And it's really important that organizations that are committed to it really do the work and really stand on business when it comes to committing to and staying the course and moving the needle with diversity, equality, and inclusion in their organizations and for their people. So this year's theme for IWD is Accelerate Action. And I absolutely love that. I think we're at a point now where we're at a crossroads. And we either are going to dig into this work and stay the course and really do it with some vim, or we are going to walk away from it, which would be devastating considering how much we've done and achieved so far. And I think my call to action is really, if you are a business that are committed to this year's theme, accelerating action, and you want to think about how you better support women in your organization, what can you do for them? If you're looking for someone to come in and talk about their lived experience as a woman with intersecting identities, give me a shout. I think it's really important that we continue to do this work, and we don't do it in a tokenistic way, because I think that's why we're getting a lot of the backlash. For me, this work needs to be long-term. It needs to be built into your organization's fiber, into every single crevice. If you're a business struggling to get stakeholders on board, I'm very good at convincing people. So you should definitely give me a shout. Let's accelerate action together. Let's think about how we drive this in a powerful and transformative way going forward. And by this, I mean closing the gender pay gap, closing the ethnicity pay gap, driving and committing to DEI in a meaningful, impactful and purposeful way in 2025 and beyond. So yeah, that is the end of my International Women's Day / International Women's Month dedicated podcast solo episode. I hope that you're leaving this session feeling like, yeah, she's right. There's some stuff to do, but we can do it, and we can do it with Grace's support. To all of the women that I am lucky enough to have in my life, whether as friends, as colleagues, as associates, or people that I just follow, I want to just give you a massive shout out. Yeah, you are amazing. You deserve absolutely everything that this world has to offer. And I am cheering you on from the sidelines. I've been to a couple of amazing events so far this month, and I'm really looking forward to attending some more. So if you are looking for anyone to jump on stage and share their story or speak to how you can progress gender equity with an intersectional lens, give me a shout. I'd love to come and support and meet you and your people. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. As always, please do like, subscribe to our channel, share it with your people. I don't know why I said that, because I don't actually say that on a day-to-day, but you get the drift. Share it with your people, share it with your colleagues, your friends, anyone that you think this episode might be useful for. And yeah, stay with us. There's more to come. If there are any topics that you would like discussed on future episodes, if you're someone driving inclusion in your space, if you're someone that counts yourself as an ally or counts yourself as someone who's got a story to tell, please do give me a shout. You can catch me on LinkedIn. Just drop me a DM. Let's get a call in the diary and have a chat. But yeah, I've been Grace Nsuro, the Organisational Inclusionist. Happy International Women's Day or Women's Month.